Hi everyone, welcome and thank you for joining us today. My name is Chloe and I'm the coordinator of events at Connecting Up and TechSoup New Zealand. Connecting Up and TechSoup New Zealand are part of the Info Exchange Group. We're a not-for-profit social enterprise that tackles the biggest social challenges through the smart and creative use of technology. Now, for those of you who haven't attended a webinar session with us before, Connecting Up and TechSoup New Zealand facilitate an annual training calendar of online webinars, workshops, boot camps and webcons to help the social sector upskill in all things digital. So please check out our training and events menu on our website for more information on events coming up online in the future. But that's enough from me. I'm excited to welcome you today to the webinar, Moving Your Organisation to the Cloud. It's an introduction to Office 365, and that's with Conan Daly, who is the General Manager of the IT team and who you can see on your screen at the moment. Now, Conan is a regular presenter with us, and the IT team are based in New Zealand, and they are a born in the cloud managed service provider. So over the past 8 years, Conan and his team have worked alongside many commercial and not-for-profit organisations, supporting them in their migration to the cloud and their adoption of the Office 365 suite of technologies. Now, before we begin today, I'll start with a little bit of housekeeping for you all. All lines are muted, so if you have any technical issues, please type it into the questions box on your webinar panel and I'll be able to assist you. And if you have any questions throughout the session, please also type it into the questions box and Conan will answer them throughout the session today and at a Q&A session at the end of today. Please note your comments and questions will not appear to the entire group. Now, if you're on a Wi-Fi connection and have multiple programs open, this can sometimes affect the quality of your audio and video. So we encourage you to close all other programs and all other internet tabs to ensure you have the best experience possible today. Please note this webinar is being recorded and a link to the recording and the slides will be sent to you after the webinar ends today. And before we start, I'd like to remind you that there will be a short survey at the end of the webinar. We'd appreciate it if you took a few minutes to provide us with some feedback today. Now that's all from me, so I'm going to pass it on to Conan to get things started today. Thanks, Conan.
Thank you for that, Chloe. That's great. Really appreciate that. And yeah, probably a better intro than I can do. Yeah, thank you to Connecting Up and for allowing us to participate in this. We really do enjoy doing these webinars. It actually surprisingly helps us hone our, I guess, our how we communicate with customers and the wider world about these products based on the feedback. So we really do love getting feedback during and after the session. So please do provide that where you can. So today, this is going to be hopefully a very interesting webinar for you. It's quite. I'm expecting a very broad base of, I guess, audience in their position and what they're hoping to get out of this. And so it may be that some people, this gives them every single part of the webinar is extremely topical and interesting, and it may be for you that there are only parts that are key based on your journey and where you're at. Yeah, I hope that there isn't too much that that is already you're already ahead of and isn't too dull for you, but yeah, just bear with, because there will be others that are behind you or potentially ahead of you in that journey. So what we're going to do to kick off is a poll. The polls help us to, well, it helps me to adapt live, which I don't always like doing, but we need to, the content and the amount of depth that we will go on this webinar. Sometimes we have these polls and we're surprised by the positions of the attendees, and so we do a little bit of live adding of content and talking a bit more in certain areas, or actually skipping over certain areas if we find that most of the audience is not interested in a certain section. So yeah, the first poll, I believe, is about the current position on the Office 365 journey. Do you want to put that up, Chloe?
Yeah, no worries. So the first poll today you guys can answer is whether you're using any of the following elements of Office 365. None at all, or I'm not sure. We are licensing Office software, We have our email within Office 365. We have our documents and emails fully within Office 365, or we use our Office 365 for documents, emails, and other functions. And I'll give people another 5 seconds to respond to that poll. Getting some great responses. Wonderful. Okay, so the results are 49% say none at all or I'm not sure. 35% say we are licensing Office software through Office 365. And 30% say we have our email within Office 365. And then we have 5% say we have our documents and emails fully within 365, and 8% say we use Office for documents, emails, and other functions. So it seems like we are at true starting level for a lot of people here today, Conan.
Very pleased to see those. I don't have to chuck out half of my slides. That's good. For those that are fully into, that have their emails, documents, and others fully into Office 365, look, I'm not saying you should sign off, but a core chunk of this demonstration will be around how to get there and why you should get there. So if you've already drank the Kool-Aid and you're already in there and you're already using it, there might be less of the content here that is helpful to you, but do feel free to stick around, because later on we'll touch on some of the cool functions, and there might be some things that you do learn, I do hope. Very good. One thing I'll just add is we're going to have a few videos because, as we realized, sometimes Microsoft create these very well-made, high production value videos that are about 1 minute to 90 seconds that sometimes don't showcase the product, but actually explain what it is and what it's for and why it's great. And they can do it a lot faster than us with their high budget visuals. So yeah, we've got 2 of those, one for SharePoint and one for Teams, that just lay the platform for me to show you a bit more about what those tools do. So yeah, we'll skip in. So key things that you'll get out today: why is the cloud important and beneficial? Obviously, what is Office 365? The benefits of Office 365, some of the ways not-for-profits are taking advantage of Office 365, key functions of Office 365, and a quick overview, and a bit of how to get started, and maybe the position you're in as well, and why you want to move away from that. And then we'll have a bit of Q&A. There's a few things around some non-key functions as well, which we'll talk about briefly. And I do want to add that I do have a couple of slides on Microsoft 365 and Office 365, and kind of explaining the change that Microsoft has made. It is a little bit confusing, even for us. And so, yeah, Microsoft haven't done anyone any favors with that change. Eric might have a take on that, but that he can add later. But yeah, so I'll talk to you about what is the traditional Microsoft 365 products, and then now the fact that they've changed them all. And now I shouldn't even be having Office 365 in this slide, but to be honest, for most of you, it's known as Office 365, and so we're continuing to bring that terminology into it. So a little bit about the IT team after Chloe did a great outline for us. Yeah, founded in 2011. We work a lot with Office 365, but generally we're an IT provider. We provide IT support and IT projects, just like most other IT companies. We've just got a bit of an extra flair for Office 365, and we're big in the not-for-profit space. We've got customers in New Zealand and Australia, and a lot of our work is done remotely, but we do on-site work, of course. So, what is the cloud? Hopefully, I think everyone will have a take on this. It's just whether my take is better than yours, which may not be. But I'm trying to describe it as best as possible, which is these are some characteristics of what is the cloud. So services are generally held in data centers, and in many cases, it's not really relevant where those data centers are, and that's increasingly what the cloud is about. It doesn't matter where it is; it's just up there somewhere. There's a little bit of faith in the system that is required. And an example I'll give you is Facebook is a very big cloud-based service that we all use. Most of us probably use. No one really asks where it is, where it's held. It's in multiple locations, geographically redundant, always on, and independent of hardware. And so sometimes we talk about the cloud and we think about the services we use for business. We don't think about those services we use personally. So, Facebook, Uber, LinkedIn, these are all applications. These are Pinterest, whatever. These are all Tinder, of course. These are all cloud-based applications that some people use. So just continuing on, they're generally subscription-based. So in the business world, there is a fee that you pay, and you just pay for the service. You don't have to pay for maintenance or support, which is a key difference to having your systems on-prem. The different technology terminologies: SaaS, software as a service, Pass, and infrastructure as a service. So infrastructure as a service is something like Azure, so where you're paying for someone to hold the infrastructure, but you're running the servers, although Azure contains all of these. And SaaS is generally what Office 365 is. There's a little bit of Pass in there, but SaaS is also, again, something like Facebook or LinkedIn or Uber. And also Office 365. So the difference between Pass and SaaS is usually a web-based or a directly accessible tool that you don't need to worry about the back end or the management of it. Whereas infrastructure as a service, you do worry about the back end. It's a server. Then, as continuing on for that, infrastructure is managed by a provider. So what is Office 365? To some people, Office 365 is this: the box is on the shelf, because that is what Microsoft branded Office to. But there's a little bit more to it than that. So really, Office 365 is a collection of tools, as you can see broadly across here, that are hosted and managed by Microsoft. It includes your Office software, like your Word, Excel, PowerPoint that you install on your workstation. But usually when we are talking about Office 365 or Microsoft 365, as I'll touch on soon, we are talking about the other functions, the server-based functions, as in a Microsoft service, the Exchange Online, the SharePoint, the OneDrive. There was a time not too long ago when the Office software was separate from Office 365, and now it's merged in. And Microsoft are doing this big merger of tools, which is somewhat confusing us all. But really, Office 365 is both the application and then the services like Exchange, SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive, etc. You can technically be using Office 365 if you have a copy of Word installed on your computer that's newer than 2016. But we would say using Office 365 is when you are attaching a service like documents or emails into the Office 365 service. Although technically it's not just that. And these are cloud-based and managed by Microsoft, and you can connect on any device. So broadly, it's a broad suite. It's a broad suite of applications. It is constantly being updated and changed as time goes on, with new tools being released by Microsoft. There are a number of different licenses or plans that you can use to give you more or less applications or different settings and features. You can use some or all of the functions. I don't know any organization that's using all of them. Usually people are using 1, 2, 3, or 4 key services, and then there is a potential that they could use more. So don't think that when I put up these visuals that have all these tools that you need to use them all. Usually you start with one and then grow from there. Word, Excel, OneNote, Outlook are part of Office 365, so it includes those applications. And generally, when you're subscribing to Office 365, you're able to avoid purchasing Office software in a traditional way. And then obviously it's cloud-based, as I mentioned before, but not web-based. Now, some common misunderstandings, misconceptions, misunderstandings. One is that it's expensive. Well, I'll put that in there because for not-for-profits, it's actually very good. It's either free or quite inexpensive. It's not as secure as having your servers in the office. People will often say that, and I would argue that most offices that have a server are definitely less secure, although there is a fair argument that they're less targeted, but we can come back to that a little bit later or in the Q&A. Another common misunderstanding is that the internet is too slow, or our internet is too slow, and particularly in Australia, no offense, there is often challenging internet situations there, and so it can affect your use of Office 365 and Microsoft 365. What I would say is Office 365 in many of the areas is attempting to cater for lower speed connectivity, whereas something like Azure is not necessarily perfect for poor internet. Now, this is a big one, and this is one of the most common misconceptions we come across, is that people believe that when they move to Office 365, they're doing everything via the web. Me personally, I do almost nothing via the website. I like my applications installed on the computer, and I like to use them in a somewhat traditional way. So another big one is people believe that they are sharing their content with others if they're in Office 365. So if they're putting their data in Office 365, that they inevitably becomes insecure, and it's sharing. Now, technically, you are sharing your infrastructure. Your data is on the same infrastructure as other organizations, but it is really well ring-fenced. And then another one I mentioned earlier is we have Office, so we have Office 365. Well, technically, yes, you do, but I'd say that it's, it's not really the same. And then the common misconception is you do have backups, you do not need backups, or you do need backups. Now, it's either one or the other depending on your situation, and I can talk about that a little bit later. So now, before we go any further, it's important that I clear up or attempt to clear up this interesting rebrand that Microsoft have done. So yeah, so if in 2019 there were two products. There was Office 365 and Microsoft 365, which was really good and clear. And Office 365 contained your, and I'm trying to describe this as best I can, contained your Office software, including Word, Excel, etc. And then it contained SharePoint and Teams and all the products in Office 365 that you traditionally know. And then Microsoft 365 was kind of like a premium upgrade that wrapped itself around Office 365, which included all the systems in 365, plus some additional functionality, particularly around security. It also included virtual desktop and a large number of other tools off the tip of my head. Intune, Autopilot, that are really around taking on some of those traditional infrastructure elements of that go with having a server on site. So it was a premium additional layer. Now, what happened in April this year is Microsoft have rebranded all their plans, and this over here doesn't. Office 365 is actually, I put my hand in front of it, which you can't see. Office 365 is no longer the term that Microsoft uses. Everything is Microsoft 365. And that's not very easy when you're the IT team. You've been talking about Office 365 since 2011, but that is what they have done since April this year. And so we're going about a process of gradually changing our languaging and invoices and branding material and everything like that to be Microsoft 365. However, I guess the public's name for this product is still Office 365, so we think it's going to take a bit of time. So technically, when I'm saying Office 365 during this webinar, I'm actually saying it wrong according to Microsoft, but I believe that if I started this webinar and said Microsoft 365, people would think I'm talking about something else. Now, we also have fairly recently had a, oh no, we haven't, that was a different one. We will be having a Microsoft 365 webinar. Is that correct, Chloe?
Yes, that's right.
Yes, we are. And that'll go into some of the advanced functions, and I'll talk about that in a moment, because there are some very cool advanced functions. But yeah, that was just to try and clear it up. When you're looking at this product online, you may start to see Microsoft 365 as the brand, and it really is just the new terminology that Microsoft wishes to use for it. So just expanding on it, if you have or you've seen or you've been proposed one of these tools, there is a new name for it. So the traditional tool that a lot of users used, Microsoft Office 365 Business Essentials, and that includes, and I've got a bit more on it in a moment, that includes your Outlook, your SharePoint, your Teams, but it doesn't include the Office software. That is now called Microsoft 365 Business Basic. Office 365 Business Premium, which is the most common license that people would subscribe to that aren't not-for-profits necessarily, includes the Exchange, includes SharePoint, OneDrive, and Teams, but it also includes your license for your Office software. That was called Business Premium and is now called Business Standard. And then the Microsoft Business 365 Business, which was effectively Office 365 Business Premium plus a series of advanced security and advanced functions is now called Microsoft Business 365 Business Premium. So the whole thing is a little bit fraught because the most common license that people would subscribe to is Office 365 Business Premium, and the premium license or upgraded version is now called Microsoft 365 Business Premium. So those two have confused each other, and we're not thrilled with this, but this is what it is. And just to showcase this a bit clearer, the three key options for the business plans: Microsoft 365 Business Basic. Really, these are some, but not all of the tools. These are the most common tools that people use: Exchange, Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive. And then Business Standard includes those tools plus the Office Suite. And Business Premium includes all of those tools from the above one, plus Intune, Azure, Identity Protection, Defender, Conditional Access, and Windows Virtual Desktop, among many other tools. So this was just to try and help with the confusion that you may already have or you may get in the future. And Eric may have some comments on this a little bit later. What I need to say, though, is as it stands, not-for-profits are able to get 10 licenses for free of Microsoft 365 Business Premium, which is a brilliant license at quite a high price generally. And it has everything plus some really strong and powerful and useful security tools. So if you are a not-for-profit that is less than 10 staff and you're paying for your Office 365, or you intend to pay, you may want to look at this. Now, continuing on, just going back to the general Office 365, Microsoft 365 product set. So what are some key benefits for taking this on generally? No matter which plan you go for, what are the benefits? So we say there are six-fold are the keys. So security, there are big benefits to moving to Office 365 with security. Now, I want to say that from a security point of view, and there's another slide on this a little bit later, it has the ability to be highly secure, but out of the gates, if you set it up yourself, there's a good chance it's not going to be perfectly secure. So it really does have security benefits, but you do need to enable them and set them up. Price, obviously, price is very good for not-for-profits being, or NGOs being, either free or very cheap. There's great features. Now, transitioning from your current situation to Office 365, I can be absolutely certain that you're going to gain additional functionality that you do not have. Backups, generally the baseline level of backup and protection against your data in Office or Microsoft 365 is pretty good, and it's out of the box. So if you currently have a server or something similar and you're paying a pretty decent fee to back up your data or back it up to the cloud, there's a good chance that you'll get a comparable service with the Office 365 built-in backup. Now, I do need to say, we are sometimes providing to customers an additional layer of third-party backup, and that's really for people that don't want to put their entire faith in Microsoft to back up their data, or they want to go back quite far, but we haven't had any major issues with customer loss of data in the last 9 years with Microsoft. So usually it's been when someone's forgotten to pay their bills, not us. Minimal support, you really don't need much support for the Office 365 systems like you do with an on-prem server. And the future updates, you're going to consistently get updates to products and services on an ongoing basis without having to pay for them. So some other key benefits, just delving into a bit more detail, and these are topical. One of the main reasons for trying to get, and this is what I probably should say, is a lot of people will be in Office 365 and their objective should be to get more services in Office 365 away from their other services or their servers or local machines, because it enables you, the more you have. So for example, you could have your email in Office 365 but not your documents. So from your email, you're able to work anywhere, but your documents, you aren't. You have to be in the office, or you have to remotely connect to your machine or your VPN or whatever. So benefits from having as many services in Office 365 as possible. You can work from anywhere. It's usable in pretty much every location, depending on your security settings. You can do most things from a mobile device. So an example would be, I was on a flying the other day for the first time in a very long time, and I had a PowerPoint that I needed to work on, and I thought I'd have a lot more time in the morning, and I didn't, because I have a child, and everything changed. on the plane, and it was amazing. The first time I've ever traveled on a plane, it had Wi-Fi. So this next point's actually moot, but there was Wi-Fi on the plane, and I was able to read the PowerPoint and make changes on my mobile phone live to a document that is synchronized with Office 365, and it wasn't actually that bad. Like I was actually surprisingly pleased with the speed and the ability for me to read it. But yeah, you can also use services online or offline. That is a key thing, i.e. on a plane that doesn't have Wi-Fi. Other functions, reasons for mobility. Coronavirus, I've had that point in there since late Feb when we first did this webinar. Coronavirus and business continuity, I mean, it's very key for our staff and our ability to continue to operate that we're able to work remotely and to be unimpacted. Now, the other sort of slight little tidbit is, and this might change now, or be different, millennials make up a big portion, will account for a big portion of workers, and they are known to seek positions that allow flexible working. And so I guess the idea of this point is that to maintain relevance and maintain a competitive advantage when you are actually looking for staff, and to avoid having your staff leave, this is something to consider. So security and privacy. So a huge number of organizations in this is APAC, Asia Pacific, have fallen victim to a phishing attack, 76%. Now, many of them actually don't really think it's a big deal. And some of you in this room may be in that position. The number of users or companies that have had a situation where they have accidentally entered a credential to something like Office 365 or Xero or Gmail or whatever, and then had been a bit embarrassed because their emails were forwarded on to other parties. This is very common, but what they didn't understand is that all of their data, all of their emails were potentially breached, and often were. And it's actually a bit more serious, particularly as a lot of NGOs, a lot of people attending this webinar will have highly sensitive data, particularly if you are interacting with clients that, and you might have medical data or financial data of your clients. That data is very sensitive, and so someone accessing their email is not just an embarrassing thing that when our reputation is impacted by our contacts being spammed, it's often the data that they have scraped out. So yeah, it is important. The data of the majority of the attendees of this webinar is far more sensitive than most commercial organizations. So security is important. Key things in Office 365 that help with this. So it's managed by Microsoft. So there's a certain level of the back end is less likely to be compromised than, say, a local company in Australia or New Zealand that is running their own server system. Inbuilt spam and malware filtering at the base level of these tools is provided. So you don't need third-party tools for that. There's really good baseline recommended security standards that are set by default or recommended. So you kind of, at the start, just by moving there, if you follow the baseline standards and don't disable things, you're going to be in a decent position to start with. Multi-factor authentication is something that is available and highly recommended, and it's really easy to, it's reasonably easy to set up, but it is available. And if you have multiple services in Office 365 and you enable that, you're going to be in a really good position. I can't recommend that enough. If you do not have multi-factor authentication, if you are able to get all your staff to enable that for the services that hold your email and your documents, you are going to be, you're going to be able to stop or block 95% of the breaches that you succumb to. So it's a really impressive system to have to give you a very good baseline. Data sovereignty. This is another reason it's a very important thing for the data privacy. If you're in Australia, you can ensure that your data is stored in Australia. If you're in New Zealand, you have to have it stored in Australia. Although for the few Kiwis that are in here, Microsoft are going to have a data center deployed in New Zealand. They announced it about 2 months ago, but it's going to take them a couple of years. So that will be an important thing. Then Azure Id. This is a function that works really well with the that premium plan I talked about, the Microsoft 365 Business Premium, and it allows you to protect the workstation, not just the data, and it's a really cool function. I won't go into a huge amount of detail in this webinar because it's a bit more advanced, but this is something, if you have some of those other tools and you would like to protect your workstations, feel free to write that down and yeah, investigate it later. So I'm going to go through some scenarios, and this is obviously the people that were in that last slither of the poll. Those people might be past these scenarios, but I expect these scenarios may apply to several of us, and I'll try not to spend too much time on this. So this could be actually we have a poll, don't we, for email, Chloe?
Yes, we do. Yep. Do you want me to launch that one now?
Please, yes. Go back.
No worries. So poll is, what service are you presently using for email? Select one of the following. Not sure. We use basic POP email. We use IMAP email. We're using G Suite or Gmail, or we're using Office 365 Exchange Online. Just give people another 5 seconds to respond to that one. Great. All right, so the results are 32% say they're using Office 365 Exchange Online, 24% say they're using Gmail or G Suite, and then it's kind of an even split between IMAP, POP, and not sure at around 15%.
So what I don't have in there is using Exchange, which I should, and that's silly of me. But let's just continue. So that's a good mix, though. So obviously there's a good chunk of people that already have their Exchange in Office 365, which is great. But scenario one, POP. If you're using POP, you could be a small or large organization. It could be bundled with your web hosting and could be a really low cost package, which is cool. But yeah, and the pros of that is it just works, and you got it, and it's probably considered low cost. The cons, it's not a very good system. It's just not a very good system. Don't let anyone tell you it is a good system. POP is if someone wants to debate that with me, start coming in the chat. But it doesn't. It's slow. You've got 15 or 10 minute synchronization. The synchronization doesn't really exist with the server, so you have to organize your own backups. Generally, it doesn't have great functionality around security either. Usually, you have a fixed password because of the way it's set up. It's just synchronizing email. It's not really doing contacts and calendars unless there's something else built in. So Exchange server, there could be a few people in here. If you have an Exchange server, that's great. It will likely be hosted on site or hosted by your IT provider. The good thing about this is it's an excellent product. It's fast and it works well. And you can customize it, I guess. The downside is it requires a server, and it requires a pretty hefty server for what it is. And it's the same thing. So if you migrate that to Exchange Online, it is exactly the same product, but you don't have to pay for the server, the backup, the hardware, and the support. You also don't know about the security. It's not certain about security. So get that up there. This is a very reasonably easy task to do. And the other thing is, what I had a conversation with someone recently who said, "Oh, we've got it on our system, and it seems to work well. But if you have an outage, if your server goes down and you have your documents there, and you can't work, if you just had access to email, you can do a lot." And so sometimes we have an impact and we lose our internet or we lose our server or whatever for a wee while, network issue. Being able to continue to work with email does allow us to truck along quite well. It allows our staff to be somewhat productive. Without email, we're usually, basically, you can't do anything. Okay, continuing on. This is outside the email side. Documents, we have that as a next poll, don't we, Chloe?
Yep, we do.
Thank you.
So where do you store your documents or files? Select one of the following. I'm not sure. On a local workstation, we have a file server, Dropbox or similar, or we use OneDrive or SharePoint. Allow people another 5 seconds. And Conan, we've got about another 10 minutes before we'll go to Eric and Q&A as well.
Cool, sounds good. I better blitz up.
All right. Great. So results are in, and we've got 60% say we have a file server,
Okay,
23% say local workstation, and then 10% OneDrive SharePoint, and even split of that 5% with Dropbox, and I'm not sure.
cool. No, that sounds good. So file servers are big. So this is a very topical slide. So scenario, you have a file server. It could be a workstation or a proper Windows server. It's provided by your IT provider or it's stored on site. Could be in somewhere else. The pros of this are it's fast, it's customizable, and you've got some powerful customization. You've got some powerful permissions customization. But the downside is it does require a server. It requires hardware. Backup's generally expensive. Mobility could be poor. You might require a VPN or a remote desktop service. And there's a reasonable level of IT support. We know we support these. We know the difference. So considering moving off those would be ideal. On Dropbox, if you're using Dropbox, it is a good tool. The downsides are it's usually not free and it's not tied in security-wise with your other services. And we'll skip on the video conferencing. So another, just blitzing through this because we're running out of time. How are not-for-profits using Office 365? Well, what we find is the best thing if you're just starting out is to start small and go and grow from there. Start with email. That is the first thing you should do every time. It becomes the center of your Office 365, and so get your email in there. Then the other reasons why they're doing it is obviously if you move, you're increasing security, you're improving your security. Video conferencing internally and externally is a big benefit, and so that is often one of the big reasons why not-for-profits will go to Office 365. E1 licenses are free for not-for-profits, which is great, up to 150 or 100. Eric will talk about that soon. And this includes many of the tools you need, and so that's often a really good place to start. And you can purchase the Office software from TechSoup for a cheaper price than if you went for E3 licenses. Right, elements of 365. So Exchange Online, very quickly. I don't think I need to spend a huge amount of time on this, to be fair. It's identical to Exchange. Allows you to connect to your email from anywhere. Filtering and backups are built in, which is great. You can use Outlook installed on your desktop to access it, or you can use the web, or both. You also use your mobile phone, and they are all synchronized. You get up to 50 gig of data and 50 gig per mailbox, which is quite a lot. Your calendars, contacts, tasks, notes, and all those other functions are built in. I need to say this, it is significantly superior to POP or IMAP. So if you haven't seen Outlook before, this is Outlook. This is a screenshot from mine from a wee while ago. You have your email, you have your calendars, you have it in your mobile. It's all synchronized, it all works. If someone sends you an email, you're going to get it within a few seconds. It's a very good tool. So Teams, right, let's do our first video. I'm going to share this and hopefully we don't have any issues. Okay, I'll jump back to the webinar. Just Chloe or Eric confirming that I'm back on screen.
Yep, all good.
Okay, just get, okay, so yeah, purpose of Teams, the key thing, Teams, often people believe it is a replacement for something like Zoom. It is, it does what Zoom does. It also does instant messaging, and it also fills a kind of intranet style content sharing and discussion messaging board system that is really powerful and really useful. These are just a couple of shots that we use. So we use Teams as an organization extensively. It accelerates our ability to communicate, particularly remotely, and we go from conversations to calls, video calls very quickly. We're all set up with headsets and webcams and everything to make that experience really powerful. Obviously with COVID, it's a little bit less, I don't need to sell people on the importance of video calling, but using Teams over something like Zoom can be really, can have some great benefits because you can do more than just the video calling aspect, the chat, and then the conversations that you have. So for example, if you see this screenshot here, this is the IT team set up as a bit of a builder's house. It's very imperfect, but we have a series of teams inside Teams. So the IT team is our kind of general conversations, and as you can see, we'll put things in each morning like someone's sick, or we have this going on, or I'm going to be late, that kind of thing. But then we have project-based teams set up for customers. If we take on a new customer, we'll set up a team, and anyone that is related to that will sit in there and put their communication and their files, and we'll have project tasks in there as well, and it sort of puts a lot of work into one place. If you are if you are interested, I'd suggest looking at one of the previous webinars we've done on Teams, which will be saved in Connecting Up's page, or tuning into a future Teams-based session. But what I will say is that it is a very powerful tool that we're seeing massive interest from our customer base and from people outside that too. It's not necessarily replacing something you've already done. You're already doing. So as opposed to Exchange, email, or SharePoint documents, it's giving you something you don't presently have. So it is a very cool tool though. And obviously video calling is part of it. So next video. Great. What's good about that video is I didn't actually show anyone how it actually works, but that's Microsoft for you. But it gave you an idea about what it can do, which is important. Hopefully you can see the screen again. Oh, so I was going to do a bit of a demonstration, but because we are a bit short of time, I'll attempt to show you this as best I can. So critically, you don't need to use the web-based functions of SharePoint to use SharePoint, which is traditionally what it was. So for example, as I said, Builder's House, this is my desktop a wee while ago, and I have OneDrive for Business, which is the personal individual document storage for just me. So I store my documents under OneDrive for Business, and this is on my computer, and it's synchronized to the cloud. and I can access it on the phone. This down the bottom here, if you can see my cursor where it says the IT Team Limited, that is our company directory, similar to how you have a file server. So you might have an M drive or an N drive or a P drive. This is the potential replacement for that. You can use it on the web, which can have its own benefits for co-editing, etc. Or you can store it similar to how your staff, colleagues, you are using it in relation to a file server, and it will synchronize from the workstation to Office 365. So that is possible. It can be a replacement for your file server. Cool functions that it has the ability to co-edit documents. This is a dated doc, this is a dated screenshot, but this is effectively how it works. You will see, and we use it all the time. We don't use it when we're writing an executive summary. We use it when we're live editing sort of data that we're looking at. So we have, graphs and tables and data, and we'll sort of live edit it, which is pretty cool. So you can do that. And critically, we have an intranet that is linking to a lot of our documents, has forms and different, sections. This one here, as you can see, health and safety, our professional development is in here as well, our staff profiles for induction. So we have a intranet with SharePoint, but then we also store our company files similar to a traditional file server, and you can do that. So just because we're a bit short of time, I'll blitz this last couple of slides. So common pathways. We would say that the best way to get started, get your email to Exchange Online, then get your documents to SharePoint or OneDrive. If you're using Skype, please use Microsoft Teams. If you're using Zoom, you could consider moving to Teams. Transfer, it's getting a little bit more complicated. Transfer your identities from your internal domain controller server to Azure Id Workplace Join for authentication. This can take a bit of time. Start using Teams for your internal communications, and I'm not just meaning video calling, I'm meaning sort of using the message boarding functions, and then start decommissioning those servers. From there, you can start looking at things like Power Automate, Power BI, Forms, etc. that are some of the lesser known services. So how do we adopt it? Start somewhere. You may already have an Office 365 account. An E1 license can get you started, which Eric's going to talk about soon. Start with email, as I said. The setup of Office 365 or Microsoft 365 is easy. It's the migration that is the challenge. Engage with your IT provider or someone out there on how to transition if you need to, because that is the challenge. Set some goals. So you could say for the next year, we want to get email, then we want to get documents, then we want to get Teams. Set some goals in your for your organization on how you want to do it and work towards it. And understand problems that you wish to overcome, mobility, for example, and if you want high level of security, outline that. So, as I said, there are other functions which I'm just going to skip over right now. Planner is a good one. Power BI is really interesting, and Power Automate is a really powerful tool. We've had a webinar on there for TechSoup. Click. What is it? Click, go.
Click, done.
That was Chloe's idea, by the way, that title. So if you want to know more about that, please look it up, because it is a really good webinar, if I say so myself. A tool like My Analytics, these things are becoming really powerful. They're an AI behavior analysis tool that I did want to show, which is really cool. And I think it's something for another webinar when we delve a bit deeper. But just letting you know, there are a lot of other tools out there that you can use. Right, we're going to have a QA. Feel free to contact us if you're interested in some migration advice or an assessment. You don't need to use us. You can use us, but if you just want some ideas for how to start, feel free to contact us. Reach out to Eric and his team at Connecting Up for licensing guidance, and feel free to sign up to our newsletter. Right, Eric's turn, I think, is it, Chloe?
Thank you, Colin. Yes, we're now going to do a brief overview. I'm just going to change over to Eric screen, and Eric Jenkins is the account manager at Connecting Up, and he is going to talk to us a little bit more about how to access these free licenses through Connecting Up, and also the process of getting involved, and give you guys a bit of a link into how to do that. So I'll let you take it away, Eric.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Chloe. Howdy, everyone. Hope you're all having an excellent day so far. I do know we're pretty short on time here, so I'll keep it pretty brief. I'll just give a bit of an overview on some of the guidance and help that we can give at Connecting Up, and I'll show everyone just a brief summary of some of the Microsoft plans and put a couple of numbers and figures against some of the plans that Conan's been talking about this morning or this afternoon, depending on where you're tuning in from. So just really quickly, Connecting Up, we are a CSP provider, somewhat similar in a sense to the IT team here, and if I go to the next slide, there it is. So as Conan's already mentioned, obviously, as most of you are already aware, since a lot of you are on Office 365 already, you do have NFP discounts on a range of different plans available through Microsoft, covering not just a lot of the plans available today, but extra enterprise level plans, extra add-ins and extra little features for things like, say, Intune, for example. There's a bunch of stuff you can get through Microsoft for their different cloud services, and you're available to get it all. So really what we can do at Connecting Up is we're more than happy to help you out in terms of if you're just getting started or you want some advice on where your licensing might be, please do feel free to reach out to us. I've got a hyperlink in this slide here, which is not too useful for you on the screen now, but we'll send you through a link to a form that we've got on our website. You can fill it out, that'll come through to me, and we can set up a time to have a chat just to talk about what your requirements are and where some of Microsoft's licensing may be able to help you out. So in particular, if you're just getting started with Office 365 or you're want to get started, but you're not quite sure what to start with, please do feel free to have a chat with us. There can be a number of different licensing options. And as Conan mentioned today, the recent name change that Microsoft did with Office 365 and Microsoft 365 has really muddied the waters because there's so much old documentation around there, which will talk about Office 365 plans that are now Microsoft 365 plans. And then likewise, there are still enterprise Office 365 plans that kept the same terminology. So it can definitely get a little bit confusing. So what I wanted to do, instead of hopping to some of the questions here, hopefully you guys can all see my screen still. I will just max out this browser here. You'll have to forgive me, I'm on my desktop, and it's a rather large screen, so hopefully this isn't too
Massive
small
screen.
for all of you. It
Jesus,
is,
that's
yes.
good.
There we go. Hopefully the text isn't too small. I can zoom in a little bit here. Hopefully this will be a little bit easier to read in a second. Now this is going to be in Australian dollars. For those of you in New Zealand, you can actually go to the same website, the New Zealand version, and it'll convert appropriately. But just as a quick summary, Conan's already gone over all the features here, but this is a little Microsoft table that talks about the different plans. So you've got your small and mid-sized nonprofits, which really are those business plans. Microsoft 365 Business Basic, which is free for about 300 licenses. Business Standard, which is very similar, but it also includes the desktop Office apps, which is really economical if you've already maxed out your 10 free Microsoft 365 Business Premium licenses, which for most not-for-profits that I speak to is more than enough. So if you're just starting out, or if you haven't, for whatever reason, used these donated licenses, do get them. Even if you're not using the other features, it's one of the most economical ways you can license yourself for Office. So it's strongly worth considering. But if you have used those up and you're just looking for the cheapest way to get Office licensing on a package, look at this plan. And then if you are in a larger size or you want some of the extra enterprise features, the Office 365 enterprise plans are still available. The E1, which is really similar to Microsoft 365 Business Basics, is also totally free for something like 2,000 users, I think it is. So an enormous amount, and they're both really good beginner licenses, as Conan mentioned. If you're not sure what you're doing, grab one of those and just have a bit of a play around. It's not costing you anything other than a bit of time, and it is time well spent if you're familiarizing yourself with all the programs. Likewise, there are other more advanced plans like E3 or E5, which generally come with more features. I won't dive into all of them here. We'll be here all afternoon, and I know none of you want that. But look, these are just some of the basic plans. If you're already on the nonprofit portal, you should be able to see all of those already. But if you did want some advice on, hey, what should we be looking at? Like I said, feel free to come and talk to us. There are a number of different licenses out there. I know that for some people, we've helped people get things like Project Online licenses. That's something you can get through Microsoft, even if you don't want the rest of the suite. If you're looking for more advanced solutions like Windows 10 Enterprise E5 licenses with the advanced threat protection through Windows Defender, you can still get that. And a lot of the times you will have to go through a provider like ourselves to have a bit of a look at that. So yeah, look, if you've got any concerns, let us know. We're always happy to have a chat. If we can't answer it, of course, we'll at least try and point you in the right direction as we can. So look, like I said, I've already been banging on for about 5 minutes here. I know a lot of you are already pretty familiar with it, but please do reach out to us if you've got any questions. Otherwise, if you've got questions for Conan and the rest of the team right now, I think now is probably the appropriate time.
And one question that you could have, if you're interested to ask Eric, directly, would be if I'm on E3, why would I go to Microsoft 365 Business Premium? And it's a good question. It's a little bit complicated, but the Microsoft 365 Business Premium does have some additional functionality over their enterprise license, and a few things that it can't do. But yeah.
Wonderful. I'm just going to reshare your screen, Conan, so people can see your contact details as well. Thank you, Eric, for that quick overview. I'm going to jump back in here as well. So, yeah, as Eric said, Connecting Up and TechSoup New Zealand, we're here to help you guys and provide further advice on what might be the right product for your organisation as well, and how to get started and how to access those free licenses, as well as the really heavily discounted products that Microsoft provide as well. So thank you, Eric, for sharing that with us today. And Conan, we do have a couple of little questions here. Some of the things I think we'll be answering in our next webinar that will be coming up with you. Actually, next week it is. So before we jump into questions, I am going to pop into the chat box a link for Australian and Kiwis on the next session we have, which is called Reimagining Your Office, how to work virtually using Office 365, where Conan's going to jump into a bit more of those demonstrations about how to use things like Teams, SharePoint, and OneDrive in particular as well. So today's session was more of the introduction as to how it all works, understanding the terminology and those kind of things too. So I'll do a couple of quick questions just before we finish up in the next 5 minutes. Just to clarify, Conan, we've got a question from Max here. He's asked, so can you access your organisation files through SharePoint or OneDrive?
Generally, so it's a really good question, Max. So technically, your data, your organizational data, that's not just for you, will be held in SharePoint. But what I was showing you in that image earlier was using the OneDrive for Business sync tool to access that data. So, it just makes it a little bit more confusing. But technically, we sort of say individual. So that's not personal, but individual OneDrive. It's stored in OneDrive sort of up there. Company, organization-wide SharePoint, but the OneDrive sync tool is the thing that synchronizes it to your workstation. So some organizations elect to just use the web and use SharePoint, but if you want it on your desktop, you'll technically be using the OneDrive business tool, but it will be stored in SharePoint. That is confusing, I know.
Yeah, it can be a bit confusing. I've got another question here, just last question I think we'll do for today. Cool. Tim's asked the question, in Outlook, we can set up specific mailing lists. Can you set up specific teams so that when we want to set up a team meeting, we can simply choose that team and include all relevant participants?
Absolutely. Yep. Mm-hmm. So what you do, and we'll delve into it in our next webinar, I'll make a point of adding that, is you create a team and you invite certain people along to it or set them up to be part of that. And then when you initiate a meeting, you can call that entire team or send a meeting, add a meeting to it, and it will potentially add it to their calendars or let them know that it's been added. So yes, that's correct. It's doable, I should say.
Wonderful. Awesome. Thank you. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we wrap up today, Conan?
Yeah, look, I think it's, this is designed to be an introduction, and part of it is why you want to go into this, introducing you to the product. There's a few things we probably wanted to delve a bit more on showing you a few things, but in the next webinars, that's when we delve far greater into SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive, the differences between them, how they interact, and that's when you'll see a bit more of the kind of basic mid-level functions, and start to maybe get some tips for how to use it in your organization. So hopefully from this webinar, if you are not in Office 365, you've gained an idea of why you want to move your services to either Office 365 or move your documents from your file server to SharePoint. And if you want to see it in more action, that's when we go to the next webinars.
Yeah, wonderful. And I really do encourage everyone, if you are interested in learning more, to attend the next webinar. It's on Thursday, the 23rd of July, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can register via those links I've popped in the chat box, or also send a link in the post-webinar email that we'll send after today as well, with links to this recording. So you can also see all the slides with more detail that Conan provided today for you guys too. So thank you so much, Conan, for presenting today. You provided a really great overview, I think, for everyone, and cleared up a lot of queries that we're often getting about Office 365, Microsoft 365, etc. And thank you everyone for joining us today, and hopefully starting your joint journey with us with Office 365 as well, if it's the right system for you and your organization. I hope you learned a lot from the presentation and that we answered as many questions as we could. Now, please also leave feedback on this session for us in a post-event survey that will launch straight after you leave this webinar today. It'll help us continue to design more sessions around Office 365 and other digital skills that you might want to learn about from us. So really appreciate any feedback you could leave for us in there. I'm now going to close the webinar, so I'll say goodbye and thank you so much for joining us today. Please enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe, and we look forward to seeing you again next time. And thank you, Conan. We'll see you later.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Bye.